It was a quiet Sunday night, the kind of night when the world slows down and even the ticking of a clock sounds like a whisper. The halls of the small-town hospital were dim and still, shadows resting gently across the white floors. And somewhere far off, a heart monitor kept time with the soft rhythm of a fading life inside room 214. An old man named William Thompson lay in his bed, breathing shallow breaths, each one lighter than the one before, his eyes half open, as if they were already looking somewhere beyond the walls. He had no visitors, no family, no one waiting to hold his hand in those final hours. But God was watching, and he had placed one heart in that hospital that would not let him go alone. Her name was Sarah Miller. She was a nurse like any other, working long hours on little sleep. But that night, something inside her spirit spoke, a quiet voice that said, "Stay with him, child. He should not be alone." Sarah stood in the doorway for a moment, the pale light falling across her face. She could have gone home. Her shift was over. Her feet ached and her eyes burned from the long day, but her heart said no. She walked to his bedside and sat down. She took his frail hand in hers. It felt cold and thin like paper, but life still pulsed there, faint and stubborn. She leaned close and whispered, "I am here, William. You are not alone. You are safe. You are loved." He did not speak, but she saw a tear form at the corner of his eye. It rolled slowly across his cheek, and she knew, somehow, he had heard her. She began to hum an old hymn her grandmother used to sing, back when faith was simple and strong. "Amazing grace, how sweet this sound," she sang softly, and the words seemed to fill the room like warm light, every note a prayer, every breath a promise that even in death there is love, and in love there is God. Time no longer felt real, only the heartbeat of two souls, one leaving, one staying. The machines hummed, the lights flickered, and somewhere deep inside that small room, heaven began to open its doors. At 3:47 in the morning, the sound of the monitor stopped. It did not cry out. It simply rested, like a sigh that had waited too long. She felt his hand grow lighter. She bowed her head and said softly, "You can rest now, William." For a moment, the silence felt holy. Sarah sat still, her eyes closed, her hand still wrapped around his. She felt something lift, something warm, something unseen. And she knew he was gone, but not alone. She stayed there until dawn, until the first rays of sunlight touched the corner of his bed. She whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for letting me be here. Thank you for reminding me what love means." When morning came, another nurse found her, still sitting there, her eyes red but peaceful. They asked her why she hadn't gone home. Sarah smiled and said, "No one should die alone," and that was all she said. She never told anyone much about that night, but those who knew her said she changed after that. She began visiting the hospice on her days off, sitting with strangers, praying for them, listening to their stories, sometimes just holding a hand for hours. Word spread quietly through town about the nurse who stayed, about the angel in scrubs who never let anyone die without love. People began to visit her patients, leaving flowers and cards. She never wanted praise. She said it was not her doing. It was God's whisper that guided her heart. She said the night she held William's hand, she felt heaven closer than she ever had before. Years passed. Sarah grew older, her hair turned silver, her steps slower, but every Sunday she still walked into that same small hospital room. 214 had been repainted many times over. New faces came and went, but she always said a little prayer at that door. Sometimes she would stop and close her eyes and see William's peaceful face, the way he looked when the light of grace touched him, and she would smile. One winter evening, as snow fell outside, she sat again by another bedside, an old woman this time, her breath faint and trembling. Sarah took her hand and whispered the same words, "I am here, you are not alone, you are safe, you are loved." And she sang that same hymn again, Amazing Grace, and it was as if the years folded together and every soul she had ever comforted was there in that room. Angels gathered, quiet and kind, filling the space with a light that had no source and no end. Sarah's eyes grew heavy. She had worked a long life and loved with a steady heart. She leaned back in her chair and let the hymn fade on her lips. When the morning nurses came, they found her there, still holding the patient's hand, her head resting gently, her face peaceful. The monitors were silent, the room still and warm. They said it looked like she was sleeping, but those who knew her smiled through their tears because they knew she had finally gone home. They said God must have sent his angels the same way she had sat beside so many others. Now heaven had sent someone to sit beside her so she would not be alone. The hospital hung a small plaque outside that room. It said, "Room 214, the room of grace," and every nurse who walked past would stop for a moment, touch the nameplate, and whisper a prayer for whoever lay inside. They said Sarah's spirit still lingers there, soft as a sigh, comforting those who are afraid, reminding them that love is stronger than fear and that no one truly leaves this world alone. Sometimes at night when the halls are quiet, some say they hear humming from that room, a gentle voice singing Amazing Grace. And maybe it's just the wind, or maybe it's something more, something holy, something that never dies, because kindness once given never fades, and love once shared never ends. And so the story lives on in the hearts of those who believe that faith can move quietly, like a nurse sitting beside a dying man, holding his hand and whispering a prayer as the world sleeps outside. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not loud or bright. They are simple moments of mercy where one soul says to another, "I will stay. I will not leave you. I will love you until your very last breath." That is the story of Sarah Miller, the nurse who stayed by a dying man so he would not be alone. The woman who proved that heaven is closer than we think, and that when we choose love, we never sit in the dark alone. For even in the stillness, even in the quiet of the night, God sits beside us too and whispers, "You are not alone. You are safe. You are loved. Always."